Okay, so I didn't think it would be appropriate to do videos on this drawing without finishing up with the colored final version. Anyway, just to give you a brief run through, you'll recall this drawing was of Elysius, one time significant other of Marvel, meaning Captain Marvel, progenitor of both Genus and Phyla Marvel, that would come later, after Captain Marvel's death. But anyway, I decided to go with a reference from the 1970s of Elysius, or better known, or not better known, but her aliases or names referring to her were as follows: either Beast Mistress or Mistress of Paradise. And there you see the basic framing of a portion of the drawing in pen and inks. Okay. In fishing out her character, I only had one reference to begin with, and let me show you that. So this reference is from the 2008 hard copy series of the Handbook to the Marvel Universe, and this is the page with Elysius on it. That reference there is a modern costume, the large figure here, but the one I went with is this one right here. I don't know how well you can make that out of Elysius there. That's from the 70s, and there she is with her two killer griffins. Now, what you see is basically a bodysuit. So you got a partially blackened out bodysuit with the bluish green highlight on it. You got a girl with the pom-pom like pigtail kind of thing with bands around them. Some, what do you call them, three-quarter gloves that go halfway up the arm, that sort of thing. So that gave me the basic idea to run with, and so I did. So I started there. That was the only reference I had come across up until that point. But hold that thought. Right, so with that reference in mind, I went ahead and ran with it. Did the pencils and a time lapse, applied the inks. During the process of applying the inks, though, I noticed there was going to be a slight problem. And what that problem was a shift in the anatomy. I made the mistake, and I've often done this, but I can't help it. I get carried away. I start the inking process before the full realization of the penciling is done. And so I started inking in the torso and the legs, and it was going really well. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is established. So you might as well slap those inks on it and solidify things. And then I looked upward and I realized that I didn't like the placement of the anatomy, and so I had to make a change. Where basically, if you go back and see the videos, you'll see what I was talking about, and I made some shifts. But the way, at first, I thought I was just going to abandon it because I couldn't figure out a way to do it. But the way I did come up with was very old school nuts and bolts method of using a paste up. But in this particular case, the paste up itself was from the actual drawing. So taking scissors and delicately cutting out the section I wanted to change, I went ahead and took that portion and shifted it to the position that I wanted. Then, put a drop sheet of equal quality paper behind it to fill in the now, existing gap of where the object actually was before I shifted it over. Um, you know, filled in what was necessary there. Um, Pasted those two pieces of paper together, being careful not to let the glue seep through. The reason for that being is that both, things like correction fluid or whiteout or glue, when it comes to the color process, which I had planned to, apply directly, because there was something in that I wanted to, show what was possible. I was open to photocopies, which I did incorporate later on, as I'll explain, but I wanted to avoid any splatter on the original surface that would obscure any color or inking for that matter, right? Sometimes whiteouts can end up obscuring ink in the sense that when they get gummy or whatever, when they start to dry, they clot, and so you end up with a texture. And even the photocopies will pick that up because it picks up textures, and it's like shadows within the crevices of the whiteout that you used, and that's no good. Anyway, wanted to avoid all that, blah, 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 yada, yada. Very carefully, got it all in there, but then realized that, well, wait a minute. Now that you have your full black and white portion ready to print, why not just, flatten that out and photocopy that? Get a new version of the black and white reference, and start with that. So I did go ahead with that. And that was all good. And I knew there was a coloring process coming up, but I wasn't sure if I was going to include that. So for the time being, I've pretty much wrapped that one up as original art. And there it was. And this is its look afterwards, after all was said and done at that point. But then something came to my attention. This is what I found. Yeah, digging into my long boxes, into my old comics, I came across this Marvel Spotlight on... Hold on a second. 1 second. Got an interruption here. Hold on a second. Sorry, I have some pets shifting around and scratching on that. They always... I don't know what it is. They seem to know when I start to record, and then they start their bullshit. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, so I came across this issue of Marvel Spotlight on Captain Marvel from 1979. This is the period where the mega computer, Isaac, has... Thanos is dead at this point. Even though it was temporarily. And, Marvel has teamed up with Drax, and of course, Rick Jones is there, and his girl, Elysia, and some of her people are in the background on Titan, satellite of Saturn. But in it, I was flipping through it, and there are 3 other references of Elysia, but really piss poor. But they did reveal something to me that the previous reference did not. Let me show you what I mean by cracking it open. Yeah, so this is actually an interesting issue. If you're looking for some 70s art that was a little bit different, these artists, it's Pat Broderick doing the pencils and Bruce Patterson on the inks. Real fine inking job. And some of the poses he gets Captain Marvel in are that Pat got Marvel into were pretty good too. Well, anyway, there's the reference to Elysia, right up here. You see? And it's the best one in here because I'll tell you, the others are piss poor. One is a close-up of just a smile on her lips, and the other one, she's stuck so far into the corner that only part of her body is showing. It's like they didn't really demonstrate. It's not a good reference. But what this reference showed me is the rest of the costume that I couldn't see in the original reference. You see that? The bodysuit is actually skirted. Right? The other reference doesn't show the legs. So I had drawn in leggings, right? But no, it turns out the legs are bare, and the boots on her feet are these furry things. So that was the eye opener, and I was like, oh, okay, now I have a complete reference to her old school costume before the changes, whatever, in the modern one. And so I was going with that. I also noticed that the highlights were kind of a grayish, greenish color. So I took that into account and filed that under L for later when it came to the coloring process. So just keep that in mind. But now I had a situation where, wait a minute, the drawing's wrong thus far because of the skirt and the leggings thing. So there it was. This new problem. So what was I going to do? It was clear, This had to go, right? At least I had to come up with a way to bare the legs. Now, fortunately, for this particular drawing, the feet and boots hang below the page line. So, oh well, forget about that. What are you going to do? And I really I wasn't sure. I was thinking, well, what should I do? Just white it all out and draw over top of it? And I thought, no, I don't want to do... Because, to tell you the truth, and I want to mention something here, that, I don't want to have to depend on whiteout too much concerning the original art. Because, quite frankly, I'm starting to have a problem with it, an issue with it. It fucking dries too fast. And you have that bottle open for too long, it starts gumming up and clumping, and you apply it, and it's all lumpy and shit. It can just destroy your work. So, I also realize that there are some other correction fluids offered out there. Some people are talking about, I don't know, there's other opaque paints and whites. I did get one from it was a Curry's art store years ago, and that was fine. It was much better than the whiteout. And it would sometimes dry up, but it didn't clump. And you just added water to it. It was water-based and stirred around a bit, and you were good to go again. But the fucking correction fluid, I mean, I would think that by now they would figure out that that was a problem. I mean, before long, the goddamn brush of the... You know how it is. It clumps. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is, in the comments section, go ahead and mention any alternatives to correction fluids that, you might be using or that you recommend. Because I've just about had it with this shit. And not to mention going into an art store and discussing the nature of what the problem was and what I needed, and having these clueless imbeciles that know nothing about the products in the store in which they live. It depends, right? Eventually you might run into someone who does happen to know that, but they're usually older. It's weird. And then you get another category of people, they also don't know. They work there all that time, but they don't know their own goddamn products. They don't. And they look at you like you got two heads because you're not going to Google to find these things out. Fucking sick of it. But anyway, that's a different issue. But I did examine and see many of the products there, but I'm not sure what to go for. If I know name brands and actual products, it's easier to target and go in. And I've looked online at different... I'm just really not sure about this, but if there are any recommendations out there for this as an alternative to this correction whiteout fluid, please let me know. I am so sick of drawings being ruined by it. Okay? Yeah, so enough of that. So anyway, I had this situation where I'm like, I'm not going to white that out. You'd be better off just drawing the whole section. In fact, I considered again, just starting all over again. But the drawing, it was completed. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, let's rig up some sort of like a pseudo emergency situation where you're under pressure to meet the deadline and you got to come up with something. So what I ended up doing is just designing a template, right? Something that would go over it. And so, I traced out the outline of that, then filled in what I thought should be there. And the next thing to do would be to apply it to this drawing. And then once that was done, photocopy it to solidify it onto one sheet, if you know what I mean. And this is what I ended up with. Hold on a second. Actually, I'll show you the one with the template actually on it. Sorry about the background wreck. We got the landscapers moving in. That's fine, whatever. But anyway, there is the original work with the later original template placed over top, and that's how it looks, right? So, those two problems with a little bit of imagination were solved, and that's all good. So, the next thing to do would be to photocopy this version and then go on to apply the colors, and rather than apply colors to the original art itself. And this is what we came up with. Okay, first of all, I'm going to say that this lighting does not do this justice at all. So I'll bring up the brightness to give you some idea. As I take the brightness down, you'll see the color seems to be a bit more enhanced. Anyway, the problem here, what's happening with the lighting is that I'm getting a lot of natural sunlight through my window, which I can't really do anything about. There's shears on the windows and they're transparent, and it's really affecting it. It's causing a white haze, which is a wonderful thing. Love sunlight, but not when I'm doing this. But yeah, the better time to take a look at these are in the evening. But I just wanted to get this one done before I head out. I have to wrap up something else. And before I left, I wanted to do this. But you get the general idea. What I'll do is, you'll be seeing this posted anyway in the section on Elysia, the Marvel Universe portions I'm going to be doing or whatever. And I'll probably show it again in a cluster of drawings and stuff in its in a better rendering where light is good, where I'll be using an actual light bulb, etc. Yeah, it's just that anyway, give you a brief rundown. Yeah, first thing to remember is that this is all done with really cheap stationery, as I've mentioned before in some of my other stuff. I mean, we're talking. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. 1 second here. Yeah, we're talking. Dollar store, big fat Crayola, 10-pack of washable markers and shit. Garbage, really. For those purposes, I'll put it that way. Let me make another adjustment here, just slightly. See if we can. There's something about that angle that's bugging me. Hold on. I think we're just gonna make do. So yeah, just cheap markers and basic and pencil crayons, a mixed media, put in there. do a two-tone thing on certain, a two-tone value, close value thing on things like, for example, like this beak. What you get is you get an orange line running through the black line work and the nostril and stuff, and then it's washed over with the yellow pencil crayon. Or sorry, in this case, the yellow marker. So you got a two-tone. The thing about using both pencil crayon and marker is that what you want to do is reserve a lot of your marker work for the things that you want to suggest are shiny or smooth or synthetic, right? Like, shiny smooth thing would be a beak, right? The shiny smooth thing would be this leather outfit, right? Or etc. Whereas something soft would be these wings, more of a pastel-y quality, right? You get the general idea. But yeah, I went with the green on the bodysuit because that wash in that comic, the issue, made me think, wow, that's it's not quite a blue, it's more like a grayish green. I think I'll go with that. So anyway, the Griffin's mane or feathers, I went with straight, solid marker color, giving it the shiny feather quality. And the body was pencil crayon, two-tone values, a brownish shade in the inked-in shaded areas with a wash of, lemony yellow color, right? Now, the wings, again, two-tone values, right? Actually, you could say it's three-tone because there's two tones of brown in there. Of course, the white or the lighter brown for the highlighted tips of the wing, as you see here, and a darker brown for the inside. However, at the same time, the dark edges of the feather that was done in with the original pen and ink drawing is just traced over with a dark brown marker, just going over that slightly. So you got three tones in there. Really simple to do. Straightforward like that. The cape, just cheap marker, just wash it all through, one tone, no highlights on it. Pretty straightforward 70s style, But I realized, oh God, I don't have a background there. And I'm like, do I really need a background? That's not really, that wasn't the point of the demonstration of the drawing, blah, 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 blah. Then I thought, well, fuck, what are you talking about? Throw in the background. So, to begin with, I'll just work from the foreground and back, okay? In the foreground, got two tones of green in there, a wash of green on what's, I guess, resembling like a lawn or a short grassed field with green highlights, and some using a 01 marker, just putting in little tiny blades of grass and texture in there in the foreground. That's fine. Wash it back, and came up with two of these, forms of botany, these two space trees, whatever. In the background, one palm-like and one strange-like, but, kind of showing a certain repetition in the structure of the leaves or whatever. And then like just a rock formation cliff thing, kind of, Arizona, New Mexico kind of whatever thing going on there. But what's important is that since they're a background, the detail is very sparse. And all the line work is very, very thin, almost non-existent. So very fine line work around the structures of these things. There's a bit more shadow in here. There's shadow between the leaves and the trunks of these trees here and that. But it's nothing major. Just two, these both are the same color green. Simple, wash it over. I think I got like 2 tones on this rock formation as well. Back here. The clouds were actually not drawn in. I just started washing the sky out with that sky blue and then just, left areas of white to suggest clouds. That's it. That's pretty much... Oh yeah, right. And the skin tone, I don't know what I was going for. I was going for... I don't know. It looks like I was going for a yellowish, pinkish tone to her. A pale skin, but with a yellowish hue. I don't know. Whatever. That wasn't that important. But anyway, I went with that and used pencil crayons. Modulate. Wash it over slightly, Purple highlights in the hair and pigtails. Some yellow in the belt. Yeah, it's all basic stuff. I left some of the highlights, like on her chest and her knuckles and the 2 gloves. Some of it, and even the edge of the garment, you'll see right along there. I left it white, so it suggests like another light source. I don't know why. I don't know what that other light source would be. I guess the same sun of the sky that it would have to be, right? But it creates an effect of depth and stuff, so I went with that. Very simple, straightforward. This is not... First of all, I want to make a point that my colored versions of my drawings will never go anymore, anyway. I used to do it, not knowing any better, especially as a kid. But what could you do? It's not like you could run off and make a photocopy back then. You could, but that meant actually leaving anyway. But the colorized versions will no longer be applied to the original artwork. The original artwork will be photocopied, the black and white version, and then the coloring process will begin on top of those. That's, right? Applying your colors on the original artwork is not how it's done. Most people know that. I get that. But just a reminder of that. And one other thing. And that one other thing is as follows. It's important to remember that this process of coloring isn't a recommendation I'm making. I think what I'm trying to do is demonstrate more the point that with ordinary stationery, you can render some works, right? At least to the degree where you can demonstrate that you're in control of the work or whatever, that you can do it with the little that you have. Although I don't think most submissions, pencils or people looking for pencils or inking jobs are, they're not going to be looking at color that much. I really couldn't tell you, but I doubt that very much. They'll be looking more towards the original art, the black and white, the inked versions of the work. And so there it is. That was the full process, and that was the end result. And that's okay. That's our girl Elysia. And that's pretty much where we would leave that and wrap that up. I'm going to put this stuff away, head out, and I'm hoping within the next half hour, and get a few of the other things done, and catch up with you after that. But before I go, I'm going to play with the brightness here a bit to see if we can, I don't know, give you different ideas about the quality of the coloring under different lighting conditions. I don't know. It's hard to say what's best. It's hard for me to see myself because I'm in this room that's well lit up with the sun. Actually, I put panels up front of my windows, not in the windows, but back from them, so my books don't get too destroyed by the sunlight. But what can you do? Anyway, there it is. That's the complete version, and I think I'll be walking away from this one now. 4 vids later, what is this? 5 vids? Boy, 4 vids, I think it is. Anyway, thanks for checking it out, and please remember, if you have, seriously, I'm not kidding about this. If you have some recommendations for correction fluid for original work, other than standard paper mate or whiteout or those kind of things which clump and just sometimes make a mess of things, I'd like to get away from them. Like I said, I did get a white opaquing paint in an art store once. I just saw it there and grabbed it. But the last time I went to my store, they couldn't direct me worth of shit. It's just ridiculous. On that note, I was in Staples the other day, and there were 2 different brands of pens. Like it was a box of 8 and a box of 12, I think, something like that. One was Sharpie, and the other was some generic brand, or like a no-name brand, something. I can't remember what it was, but they both advertised as ultrafine. And you know, when you're picking up technical pens, you can usually find out what the grade is on them, right? Are they a 0.1, 0.5, or 0.5, or whatever, right? You know, are they a 1.0, whatever, right? Different sizes. And I said, well, hey, fella, he was like, I'm hanging out in front of the pen thing, trying to figure some things out, right? But you know that situation where the employee thinks you're stealing something or you're up to something, so they kind of hang around and they fiddle with the things that are on the display rack like they need fiddling with. And, you know, it's getting annoying. So I decide, well, shit, since he's here, I'm going to put him to work and ask him. I said, look, we got 2 versions of this, what they're calling ultrafine. Could you tell me what the grade is? Can you tell me what size? You know what I mean? He couldn't. But anyway, so I left him there while he was scratching his head. You know, because he was making me feel uncomfortable, so I made him feel uncomfortable. I don't know how else to put it. But anyway, if you do in fact know or recommend a brand name and a product for just those purposes, please mention them. It'd probably help out quite a bit. Maybe not just myself, but maybe someone else who had that same question. Anyway, again, thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the next one.